So we felt that it would be fantastic if we had someone who really knows about this come and speak to you all about the whole idea of microbes and their place in human health and sickness and disease. And we have none other than someone I've come to respect a great deal, Professor Sarkis Mazmanian. Hi, Sarkis.
Hello, David. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the opportunity to discuss this very, very important topic that you just introduced. I think you did a very good job in
Thank you.
framing the change and the shift over the past, I'd say, 10 or 15 years that, at least in the research and scientific community, and partially in the medical community, has happened in terms of how we view bacteria and how we view organisms as, again, not these insidious little creatures that only want to make us sick, but ones that potentially can, be developed to improve human health.
Absolutely. And you've been working in this field for quite a while. Can you just give us a brief background of who you are, what you do, and how you came into these discoveries that we'll talk about soon?
Sure, sure. I don't like to talk about myself too much, but my formal training is in microbial pathogenesis. In fact, you mentioned MRSA, which is methicillin-resistant Staph aureus. My entire thesis, my PhD, which was done at the University of California, Los Angeles at UCLA, was studying Staph aureus and its virulence factors, how this organism causes illness. And this was at the end of the late 1990s, when, again, at the time, any self-respecting microbiologist was either studying infectious disease or microbial physiology and metabolism, but there really was no active research in trying to understand beneficial organisms. And in fact, much of the work on the microbiome, or many of the concepts of the microbiome had been developed almost a century ago, but had not been researched and investigated with the modern tools and the modern perspectives that we have now. And so as I was finishing my graduate work, I became interested in why humans harbor hundreds of trillions of bacteria in their intestines, why we have these organisms, and how we tolerate these organisms. Why don't we reject these organisms? Why doesn't our immune system attack these organisms? Because our immune system attacks infectious agents. And that was really the critical question that made me shift my career, staying in microbiology, but instead of working on how the immune system controls infections, I began to investigate, or at least hypothesize, that the immune system itself benefited from these interactions, benefited from interactions with microbes. And so I moved on
What made
to.
you? That's a huge leap. What made you? Forgive me for butting in, but when, like you said, everybody else was thinking in a different direction. Why would you? What possessed you to go in the opposite direction?
uh, Blind faith, I guess, curiosity, this desire for exploration, but very little data, right? Because again, at the time, 2 decades ago, we knew that these organisms existed, right? I mean, again, as I said, the concept of the microbiome and its potential impact on human health was proposed by Elie Metchnikoff well over 100 years ago, and even by Lou Pasteur and other prominent microbiologists a century ago. But again, in modern times, had just not been studied. And to answer your question, as I started thinking about the trajectory of my career and what I wanted to research and what interested me as I moved towards independence, away from finishing up my training and moving towards my own independent career, I love microbes, I love bacteria, so I wanted to stay in that general area. But again, I have this innate desire to do things that are different than tradition, than the field itself. And I literally read a one-page article about that reminded me about these bacteria, and it was just very superficial. It just was a more of a commercial article than a scientific one. And literally within minutes of reading that article, I thought to myself, this is where I wanted to take my career. Of course, at the time, because the inspiration, the impetus, if you will, was very spontaneous. I didn't know exactly where I wanted to go, but I just knew I wanted to study beneficial microbes. And then moved on to Harvard, where I first tested the hypothesis that the immune system, its development and its function relied on inputs from the microbiome. We were able to make some discoveries. And then just to answer your question about my career, and then in 2006, moved from Harvard to the California Institute of Technology, Caltech, where I've been ever since. And our lab has studied how bacteria impact the immune system, the nervous system, and the metabolic system in a number of different contexts. And it's important for me to mention we're basic researchers. I'm a basic scientist. We work in mouse models or animal models of disease. I'm not a clinician. We don't work with humans.